So we kind of concluded before lunch, applying these things to our own work situation, right? We've been through that call center, and I think it's just it's a really cool, practical way of kind of exploring that inward and outward mindset in a work environment. You see Laura beginning to kind of become alive to all the other people that she affects, and it changes the way she does her job. It might take just a minute or two longer, but not really. They were able to make some other adjustments so that they could still be as responsive to the customer. But because they made that change, the organization itself benefited tremendously. The customers benefit tremendously. And not only that, but she did, because now she began to recognize her purpose and her role in that larger mission. That's a very powerful, wonderful thing to have for all of us, right? Now we're going to move on to the next section, where we're going to move into applying outside, inside out collaboration. Okay? So this is the next step. So we're starting kind of on our job description. Now we're going to kind of move out. We're going to see how we can utilize this outside, inside out, this outward mindset, how we can increase collaboration and create a climate in which collaboration can flourish. Okay? All right. And I have no idea what picture I'm not even trying to. Well, see, notice I have that. Oh, no, that we don't have it. 106 over here. So for three of us, it's 106, right?
Yeah, they're 106.
All right. Everybody else 102. All right. I want you to think back for a moment. You remember those videos, and again, that feels like last week or something, right? Forever ago. Al Malali, okay? Luis Francisconi. Think about what they did, in addition to wanting their people to make their work more helpful to others, okay, which is here. All right, so they were agreeing with us in that first thing. I want you to conceive of your work and your objectives within the context of others. Okay, so that was one element of what they did. They also created time and space for their people to consider more fully what their colleagues were trying to accomplish. Okay, so these individuals here materialize. Okay, so we're kind of moving on to this phase. How did they both do that? Just really quickly. How did they create time and space? We talk about that. In some ways, it sounds very abstract. It sounds like a wonderful thing, creating time and space. What were some of the things they said or did that literally created this time and space for them to begin to consider other people?
I think Alan continued to give space and just do the same thing each week. Give them an opportunity to change their colors, or, instead of saying, right here, right now, what is red on your sheet,
Yeah.
kind of gave them an opportunity to.
Yeah, Courtney, that is a great point. Do you think that there were some in that room that were just kind of waiting out, all right, this is the latest thing. Let's see how far this goes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw myself on that sacrificial altar to placate him or whatever. Let's go ahead and let this run its course, right? So that's a great point.
And to what Courtney said too, I liked how I noticed this the first time that he kept doing it. In the first meeting, when everyone put up green, he could have went, come on guys, it's not all green, what's going on? But he let it just happen naturally. I thought that was important, because if he would have forced it out of him, it may not have happened. The result may not have been the same.
Right. If he would have been trying to say, all right, this is urgent, he could have said, no. I know for a fact they aren't all green.
Right.
Your department, I know that this is actually going on there. Why are you saying that?
Yeah, so
Immediately changes the tone of the
he dedicated all those meetings, that time, and let it happen, which was, I thought was really important.
Do you think that was a strong sign of some patience that he had? Do you think that might have been difficult?
Lose $17 billion.
Do you think he's feeling some pressure from the board
Yeah.
and from those that hired him? You were here to make some changes. Do you think he feels that pressure?
I think it wasn't until like week 6 that somebody actually.
Took a while, didn't it? Took a while. Now, once somebody finally did that, now this was the next big pivot point, right? This was the next inflection, key, critical moment. Mark Fields. Was it on red? In that moment, again, we talked about this a little bit, but what did he do to create time and space for a collaborative environment to emerge?
You asked how can I help you about it, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Tonal change, completely different, right? What he did at that moment is he said, you and I are on opposite sides of this. We're over on the same side. What can we do together to get this thing figured out, right? Again, created time and space, and he modeled the way. He essentially showed them, this is what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting heads to roll. Of course, that's what everybody else expected, right? Talk about that. And then the clapping of the hands, and everyone's just waiting for the guillotine to emerge, and off with his head. All right. So he deliberately did a number of things along the way to create time and space. And Courtney, I want to go back to something you said there as well, which is when we talk about time and space, sometimes we think of that time and space within this meeting, in this area. But we really mean that as far as the life cycle of the organization, the rhythm of the organization, taking into account the culture and where they've been, and realizing if we're urgently trying to see these changes made without taking into account the culture and where they're coming from, which mindset is that? We're actually right back in an inward mindset, aren't we? We're saying, I don't really care what kind of a culture, what constraints you feel, or how difficult this might be for you. I want you here now, where I'm at. And he didn't do that. So time and space, and then the invitations, and the way that he would phrase things, that was very deliberate. The way that he phrased it, it almost feels like it was just an instinct. It was a natural reaction. But that does not happen automatically. You have to be consciously thinking about that. And that's become part of who you are. How about with Louise? How did that time and space get created? You remember all the way back? This very first video.
They had to cut out 100 million.
Yeah.
100 million in the budget.
And the first half of their meeting was just a waste of time, basically.
But then other people came together and they were coming up with
Yeah.
Yeah.
She actually had to create, she had a little bit of help there. And she actually had to say, we're going to stop, we're going to create some time, we're going to create some space to have a different kind of discussion that doesn't seem logical and rational given the urgency and the need to hurry up and cut this out. We're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to invest. We're going to invest in a little bit of exploration, okay? And so that investment, that willingness to create that time and space is ultimately what led to that innovation and that collaboration that ultimately accounted for them being able to cut that 100 million without losing a single job, okay? And again, I challenge any company, no matter how big or small, cut $100 million without losing a job. That takes a tremendous amount of collaboration. Think about how well they need to get to know each other's organizations and departments and the level of trust that would have to be built to where people would voluntarily work in that kind of environment, okay? All right, so what we're talking about is that collaborative environment. It needs that time and that space, okay? And both of them did this in different ways. But they first of all had to model that way. And then they had to create that time and space and kind of begin to build that culture, okay? And it doesn't happen automatically. All right, so this is what we're going to do now. On page 100, okay, we're going to go to this collaboration map, okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do sounds like busy work, but it's not. It's like, all right, let's put some piles of rocks over here, now move them over there, now move them back. First thing I need you to do is take the names that you had on your previous map that we did, transfer them over to this map, okay? So go back to our previous map, where we were earlier, and we're going to bring everything over to our collaboration map. Okay, so it's our job description map. Job responsibilities map. Just bring over those same names. As you think about these things, you think about Louise, you think about Alan. Neither of them came out out and said, okay, we're going to have an outside triangles exercise, right? But that's really what they were doing. They were creating time, space, and an environment in which they could be able to support each other's outside triangle. Because unless we know those, how collaborative can we truly be? That's all it is. All right, we've got those names transferred over. Wonderful. So we've got them set up along the side here. Okay. Next step, use a scale from 0 to 10 to rate my understanding of the outside triangles. Again, objectives, desires, hopes, needs, and challenges of each of these individuals.